There are moments in life when silence says more than confrontation ever could, when the universe does not need to announce justice because the weight of consequence begins unfolding on its own. And what has been hidden from you, what has been happening behind doors you were never meant to see, is one of those moments. Someone with influence, someone who believed their position gave them the right to interfere with your peace, someone who thought power meant they could touch what was meant for you and walk away untouched, is now discovering something they never expected. The cost of crossing certain lines is never immediate. It arrives slowly, quietly, often when no one else notices. And that is exactly what is happening now. You may have wondered why certain battles in your life felt so unfair, why some people seemed protected no matter what they did, why the ones who caused confusion, delays, and heartbreak around you appeared to keep winning while you were left carrying the weight of what they disrupted. But what you could not see was this: there are victories that look real only from a distance. There are people who smile publicly while privately their world begins to crack beneath them. And there is someone connected to your pain who is learning that what they took lightly has become heavier than they can carry. Don't skip, because what is unfolding is deeper than revenge, deeper than punishment, deeper than anything petty or small. This is not about destruction. This is about revelation. This is about a person who once felt untouchable being forced to confront the truth of what their choices created. Not because someone exposed them, not because someone fought them, but because life has a way of placing a mirror in front of those who misuse their influence, and eventually they must look. What they broke was not merely a moment. It was trust. It was peace. It was timing. It was something sacred in your journey that they had no right to interfere with. Perhaps they underestimated your worth. Perhaps they assumed your silence meant weakness. Perhaps they believed your patience meant you would never rise beyond what they tried to do. But now, they are watching things shift in ways they cannot control. Doors that once opened easily for them feel heavier. Confidence they once carried effortlessly has begun to fade. Their certainty is turning into restlessness. Their peace is becoming noise. And the strange part is, few people around them understand why. From the outside, they may still appear composed. They may still wear the same smile. They may still speak with the same authority. But inside, something has changed. Because when a person knowingly disrupts what was never theirs to damage, the consequences begin long before anyone else can see them. It starts in quiet places, in their thoughts, in their sleep, in the private moments when they are forced to sit alone with themselves and feel what can no longer be avoided. Stay till the end, because there is something important waiting for you in this truth. Their consequences are not your responsibility to manage. Read that again in your spirit. You do not need to chase justice when life is already arranging it. You do not need to explain your pain to people determined not to understand it. You do not need to spend your energy proving what happened when time itself is revealing what words never could. The most powerful thing you can do now is continue forward while what they created circles back toward them. And perhaps that is the part they never anticipated. They expected your focus to remain on them. They expected your heart to stay trapped in what they did. They expected your energy to be consumed by confusion, anger, or the need for answers. But something shifted in you. Even if slowly, even if imperfectly, you began healing. You began rebuilding. You began remembering who you were before their interference ever touched your life. And the moment you started reclaiming yourself, the balance began to change. Because some people do not realize what they had until their actions trigger the very unraveling they thought would never come. They do not understand the value of peace until their own disappears. They do not understand the pain of betrayal until trust starts vanishing from their own world. They do not understand the weight of what they disrupted until they begin losing what once made them feel secure. Something extraordinary happens when the person who wounded you begins to experience the same instability they once created for others, not as revenge, but as awareness, not as cruelty, but as clarity. And whether they admit it or not, they know. Deep down, they know exactly when things started changing. They know exactly which decision became the turning point. They know exactly whose peace they interfered with. There is a reason their confidence has become forced. There is a reason their victories no longer feel satisfying. There is a reason the things they once controlled are slipping in strange and unexpected ways. Because no amount of status can protect a person from the consequences of misusing it. And while they wrestle privately with what is unfolding, you may be entering a season where your own life begins moving differently. Not because everything becomes easy overnight, but because what was delayed begins clearing. What was blocked begins loosening. What felt heavy begins lifting. The interference is losing strength. The grip they thought they had is weakening. Their influence over your path is fading. Something important is waiting for you beyond this chapter. But first you must understand this. Do not go backward emotionally just because the truth is finally catching up to them. Do not return to anger. Do not return to obsession. Do not return to needing front row seats to their downfall. That is not your assignment. Your assignment is to rise while life handles what you cannot. And maybe the most shocking part of all is that this powerful person may soon attempt to reappear in some form. Not necessarily with direct apologies. Not necessarily with obvious confession, but through subtle behavior changes, through unexpected softness, through strange attempts to reconnect, to observe, to remain near your energy. Why? Because when someone loses inner peace after crossing you, they often become drawn back toward the very person they underestimated. Not because they fully understand it, not because they know how to explain it, but because something in them recognizes where the shift began. When that moment comes, remember this carefully, not every return deserves re-entry. Some people come back not because they have transformed, but because they feel the emptiness created by their own choices. Discern the difference. Watch actions, not words. Watch consistency, not emotion. Watch humility, not performance. Because true change does not arrive with dramatic speeches. It arrives with sustained evidence. And if they never return? If they never acknowledge what happened? If they never say what your heart once wished to hear? Then understand this deeply. Closure does not require confession from the one who hurt you. Sometimes closure arrives when you witness life teaching them what your words never could. Sometimes closure arrives when you no longer need validation because your spirit already knows the truth. Sometimes closure arrives quietly, the moment you realize they are no longer standing in power over your emotions. That may be the real breakthrough approaching for you. Not their downfall, not their regret, not even their realization, but your freedom. The freedom to stop carrying what was never yours. The freedom to stop questioning whether what happened mattered. The freedom to trust that what was done in hidden places never stays hidden forever. The freedom to walk forward without needing every answer. Because what they are paying now is not simply external loss. It is the unbearable realization that power without integrity eventually collapses inward. And while they navigate the consequences of what they chose, you are being invited into something greater than vindication. Peace. Real peace. The kind that comes when you no longer need to monitor the fate of those who wronged you. The kind that comes when your healing becomes more important than their explanation. The kind that comes when your future matters more than your past pain. So if you have felt recently that something is shifting in the atmosphere around your life, if you have sensed old burdens lifting without understanding why, if you have noticed strange distance forming between you and people who once held influence over your emotions, trust that some battles are ending in silence. Some truths are surfacing behind the scenes. Some consequences are unfolding where you cannot see them. And the person who once thought they could break what belonged in your life without consequence is learning that some mistakes echo far longer than expected. But this is only the beginning. Because what happens next when the full weight of realization reaches them, may reveal just how deeply they underestimated who you truly are. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when the one who once stood so certain of their choices begins to feel the full weight of what they set in motion, not when others notice, not when their reputation shifts, not even when circumstances first begin to turn. No, the real moment arrives when they are left alone with their own thoughts and cannot outrun what their spirit already knows. And that moment may be closer than you think, because the person who interfered with your peace is no longer merely facing inconvenience, they are facing realization, the kind that settles in slowly, the kind that keeps a person awake long after the room goes silent, the kind that whispers, over and over, "You should not have done that." What they once justified so easily has become harder to explain to themselves. The choices they defended now feel different in hindsight. The confidence they had while disrupting your path has been replaced by a question they cannot silence. Why did everything begin changing after they crossed that line? They may not say it aloud. Pride rarely allows that at first. But internally, they are tracing the timeline. They are replaying conversations, re-examining decisions, connecting losses, tensions, setbacks, and strange unrest to the exact moment they interfered where they never should have. And whether they admit it publicly or not, they know. They know something shifted when they chose to mishandle someone they underestimated. Yet here is what makes this more profound than simple regret. They are not only mourning what they did to you, they are beginning to understand what they lost in themselves when they did it. Because every act against integrity takes something from the person committing it. Every betrayal leaves residue. Every misuse of influence damages the one who wielded it. And now the version of themselves they once believed in, the powerful, untouchable image they carried, has started to crack. Not because others exposed them, but because their own reflection no longer feels honest. Don't skip. Because many people wait their whole lives to understand this truth, the deepest consequence is not public embarrassment. It is internal collapse. It is becoming successful on the outside while feeling fractured within. It is maintaining appearances while privately knowing your foundation is no longer clean. It is realizing you traded peace for ego, and the exchange was not worth it. There may be moments soon when you sense their energy shifting around you, perhaps through silence where there was once arrogance, perhaps through awkward kindness where there was once coldness, perhaps through indirect attempts to monitor your life, your progress, your healing. Why? Because your growth has become impossible for them to ignore. They expected damage. They expected delay. They expected you to remain broken by what happened. But instead, you kept moving. You kept rebuilding. You kept becoming more of who you were meant to be. And nothing unsettles a person more than watching someone rise beyond the harm they intended. That sight alone can become its own mirror. Because now they must confront something painful. Despite everything they did, you were not destroyed. You were refined. The pain they caused did not erase you. The confusion they created did not define you. The delay they introduced did not end your story. If anything, it awakened a deeper version of you. And perhaps that is the part they never prepared for, the possibility that trying to limit you would become the very thing that strengthened you. That their interference would push you into deeper wisdom, sharper discernment, stronger boundaries, greater self-respect. What they meant as disruption became development. What they intended to weaken you ended up revealing your resilience. And now they are watching someone they thought would stay small begin to rise into a presence they can no longer ignore. Stay till the end, because there is another layer to this. The more they recognize your growth, the more they are forced to face the contrast between your path and theirs. While you are healing, they are unraveling. While you are finding clarity, they are battling confusion. While your peace is returning, theirs is fading. And not because life is unfair to them, but because truth eventually creates separation between those who honor it and those who abandon it. That separation is becoming impossible for them to escape. They may try to distract themselves. They may immerse in work, noise, attention, new people, new routines. They may attempt to convince themselves none of this matters. But when a person has crossed a line they know they should not have crossed, distraction only delays the reckoning. It never erases it. And here is what you must remember if they ever return with softened words or altered behavior. Awareness is not the same as transformation. Regret is not the same as growth. Missing your energy is not the same as respecting your worth. Some people feel the pain of losing access to you before they truly understand how to value you. That is why discernment matters now more than ever. If they approach, ask yourself, have they changed, or have circumstances merely humbled them? Have they become better, or simply more uncomfortable? Are they reaching from sincerity, or from emptiness? Because your healing has cost too much to hand it back to someone who has only learned how to miss what they once took for granted. And still, whether they return or remain distant, their journey is no longer your burden to track. You are not responsible for supervising someone else's lesson. You are not required to stand nearby while they learn what your absence taught them. You are not obligated to reopen doors simply because consequences finally reach them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let people live with the echo of what they chose. Let them remember your silence. Let them remember your absence. Let them remember the peace they lost access to. Let them remember the version of you they can never reach again. Because not every lesson is meant to end in reconciliation. Some lessons end in distance. Some end in memory. Some end in irreversible understanding. And if that becomes their ending with you, trust that it is enough. Because the real victory was never seeing them fall. It was becoming someone their actions could no longer define. The real victory was not their suffering. It was your healing. The real victory was not their regret. It was your rediscovered worth. You are stepping into a chapter where your value no longer needs to be defended, only recognized. Where your peace no longer depends on who understands your story. Where your future no longer bends around those who once tried to control it. And the person who broke what they had no right to touch is being forced to watch that future unfold from a distance they created with their own hands. But what they realize next, when they understand exactly what your absence now means in their life, may shake them even more than the consequences already have. Absence has a way of teaching lessons that presence never could. And the person who once believed they could interfere in your life without truly losing you is beginning to understand that now. Not in theory, not in passing, but in the deepest part of their awareness, where realization no longer feels like thought, it feels like weight. Because there is a difference between knowing someone is gone, and finally understanding what their absence means. And that understanding is starting to settle over them like a truth they can no longer escape. At first, they may have convinced themselves your distance was temporary. They may have believed time would smooth everything over. They may have assumed they could return whenever they wished, that your kindness, your patience, your understanding would always remain available. But now, they are seeing something they never expected. You are no longer waiting where they left you. You are no longer orbiting the pain they caused. You are no longer shaped by the version of yourself that tolerated what should never have been tolerated. You have changed, quietly, deeply, irreversibly, and that realization unsettles them more than they would ever admit. Because what they are truly grieving is not just your absence, it is the loss of access. Access to your energy, access to your care, access to the version of you that once gave more chances than were deserved. They are confronting the fact that some doors do not stay open forever, and some people only understand the value of what they had when the invitation is gone. Don't skip, because this part matters. There is something uniquely painful about realizing too late that the person you underestimated was the very presence bringing peace, depth, and sincerity into your life. There is something haunting about recognizing that what you treated casually was rare. And for the one who crossed you, that realization is growing stronger by the day. They may hear your name and go quiet. They may think of old moments and feel them differently now. They may replay situations they once dismissed and suddenly understand the significance they were blind to at the time. Memory becomes heavier when regret enters it. The laughter they ignored becomes sacred in hindsight. The loyalty they took for granted becomes irreplaceable in hindsight. The patience they misread as weakness becomes extraordinary in hindsight. And while they wrestle with that truth, you are being invited into a new level of emotional freedom, the kind that happens when you stop needing people to finally understand your worth before you believe it yourself. That is the transformation taking place within you. You are no longer waiting for validation from those who failed to value you properly. You are no longer shrinking to fit into spaces that mishandled your presence. You are no longer confusing being needed with being respected. You are learning the difference. Stay till the end, because something even deeper is unfolding beneath all of this. The person who broke your trust may soon face a moment of undeniable recognition, an experience, conversation, or quiet revelation where they understand not just that they lost you, but who they lost. And that realization hits differently. Losing someone is one thing. Realizing the magnitude of what you lost after it is gone, that is another kind of pain entirely. They may begin comparing everyone to you, not because you were perfect, but because what you carried was real. Your sincerity, your loyalty, your heart, your depth, your presence, those things are not common. And the more they encounter surface level connections elsewhere, the more obvious your rarity becomes. But by then, your life may no longer have space for people who needed loss to teach them your value. That is not bitterness. That is growth. There is wisdom in no longer reopening chapters that cost too much to survive. There is strength in understanding that being missed does not automatically mean being meant to return. There is maturity in recognizing that some apologies arrive only after convenience disappears. And still, if they do reach for you again, if life places them back in your orbit in some unexpected way, do not let nostalgia cloud discernment. Missing what once was can make broken things look beautiful from a distance. Regret can make people sound sincere before they have actually changed. Longing can create convincing performances. But you are not who you used to be. You see more clearly now. You feel energy more accurately now. You understand patterns more deeply now. You know the difference between someone who has transformed and someone who simply hates the consequences of staying the same. That wisdom is your protection. And perhaps the most powerful truth of all is this: their regret is not proof you should return. Sometimes their regret exists only to confirm what you survived was real. Sometimes their longing exists only to remind you that losing you carried weight. Sometimes their pain is not an invitation back in, it is merely evidence that your presence mattered more than they understood. Let that be enough. You do not need to go back to be validated. You do not need reconciliation to feel complete. You do not need their confession to know your value. Because the greatest confirmation is not hearing, "I was wrong." It is watching life reveal it without your help. And now, as they sit with the emptiness their choices created, as they feel the absence of what they once treated carelessly, as they recognize that your energy no longer belongs to the version of them who mishandled it, you are stepping into a chapter they may never fully reach again. A chapter where your standards are higher, your peace is stronger, your boundaries are clearer, your discernment is sharper, your self-worth is no longer negotiable. They may watch from afar and wonder how they lost someone like you. They may replay the exact moment things changed. They may carry questions they can never ask and regrets they can never fully explain. But none of that can undo what was done. Because some lessons come too late. Some realizations arrive after the window closes. Some people understand your worth only after becoming a stranger to your future. And if that becomes their story with you, let it. Because your story is no longer about what they lost. It is about what you found after surviving them. Your strength, your clarity, your standards, your peace, your voice, your power. And what happens next, when your new life begins reflecting the version of you they never thought they would lose, may become the final lesson they were never prepared for.